UFC 274 is upon us, and I am hyped. It's going to be a good one. I have been waiting for this pay-per-view for, I don't know, it's the most excited I've been for one in a while. I love Charles Oliviera. I've been on the DoBronx hype train for, I can't even remember when the first fight I really backed him, but gambling-wise, and I'm just a fan, I've always liked his style. I kind of should, I'll plug more stuff and tell you about it, but I want to get into the archive to see when the first time I really backed Charles Oliviera was, because it's hard to remember now. Let's find out. But, you know, at Mike Mush Sports, you get the picks there, too. Why is this happening? All right, there we go. Missed it the first time. Wow, potential with Makhachev. He would be plus 250. I love how they give future events odds now on Best Fight Odds. Good site if you don't bookmark it yet. You should. Oliveira moving to over 200 favorite now. It's something. Had him in the Poirier fight as an underdog. Had him big against Michael Chandler, probably right when the channel first started back then. I remember we went hard on him. Had him in the Tony Ferguson fight. Gordon, yep. We got to go back pretty far. I mean, I remember him fighting Jim Miller, and I just thought that was so easy. Yeah, it's been a while. Clay Guida, probably Paul Felder, maybe. Could have been the beginning of it. But it might have gone back further than that. And I've just been on this guy for so long. I'm so happy to see him be champ. So it's hard for me to separate that from analyzing this bet. The good news is I think Justin Gaethje is a monster. He's just another one of my favorite fighters because that's the kind of guy generally that I just don't really want to bet his fights most of the time. I bet him against Tony Ferguson. We'll get to that nightmare in a little while. But I don't know. It's just always going to be whether his chin can hold up and whether he can land the one-punch knockout and hopefully use enough leg kicks to get closer to those goals. And you just never know what you're going to get. It's too hard to bet his fights. They're super good to watch. But I never really find a lot of value, so I struggled with it a little bit. I do have a lean for that fight, but I do want to go through the prelims first, get a couple there, then go through the main card and finish with the main event, obviously. Couple prelim cards, couple prelim fights that I like. This CJ Vergara and Clayton Rodriguez fight, I've never seen Rodriguez fight, but his record is pretty good. Seems like a strong kickboxer that they're going to really want to push. I liked Vergara in his last fight. Who was he fighting against? I don't remember it being this fight. Could have been Ruiz. That's a long time ago. Yeah, I'm not sure. I swear he just fought not that long ago. Oh, Odie Osborne. Right. That's what it was. Yeah. And he lost, but it was a pretty good fight and competitive. And I remember him having some success in that. And Odie Osborne's pretty good. So I kind of thought that, I mean, not that he's a veteran, but like having some experience in there, fighting a guy who I think is pretty good, who's a striker in his own right, and then another striker coming in, and he's a huge underdog, felt weird to me. I almost wanted to take CJ Vergara, but I think I'm probably missing something with Clayton Rodriguez. I haven't seen him fight, so I'm intrigued to watch that one. I wouldn't put any action on it, but this line seemed juicy to me. I don't know. Andre Fialo, I think, is really, really good. He has been looking better and better, and I think he's on a trajectory where we're going to see him ranked ASAP, and I do think he probably deserves it now. And this is kind of, I gotta feel like against Van Camp, this is just a fight where we're like, in 2 years, we're like, why was he fighting Cameron Van Camp at that time? We should have known that he was going up. I've liked everything I've seen from him. And the Miguel Baeza win was incredible. It was right off the bat, and he's fighting quickly again. That was just, on fight night, it's going to be 3 weeks. since that fight, but he didn't take any damage, and he seems fine coming out of a camp. Sometimes that's better, right? If the guy wants to fight and is healthy, and I don't really mind that so much if you won and took no damage. The Michel Pereira fight was interesting. It went to decision. That's a hard fight for anybody, but I thought he looked pretty good at stretches in that too, and then won 4 fights before that. And I just feel like if he didn't have this loss here, he would already be in the rankings and fighting someone way, way better. So this feels like the last time that we can get some good, I mean, you're paying the minus 400 vig. It's obviously, they know what's going on here, but this is the last time you'll get him against an opponent like this. No disrespect, but I just feel like this is a mismatch, and he's going to have a huge step up in competition. So I'm just going to take that and put it in some parlays if I can. Because it feels like a free win and one of the last times you're going to get it with this guy, who I think is really good and has some good fights ahead of him. The only other fights I have strong opinions on the undercard, this Blagoy Ivanov fight, I would take him because he's had a lot of good competition, right? I feel like he's fought against some really big-time fighters. Augusto Sakai, Derek Lewis, Tai Tuivasa, Ben Rothwell beat Tai Tuivasa, which is not easy to do. Took him in a decision, which means he was able to avoid huge bombs. JDS, yeah, he's fought some really, really legit people, which generally I like, but the problem is he went to split decisions in his last 2 fights, and I remember him taking bombs in these fights, and it's been a while. 2 years since these fights. So, I don't love that. Heavyweights generally stay pretty active, and when they don't, I'm worried about what that... I don't know what he's going to come back and look like. And the odds to lay minus 160 on a guy that hasn't fought in 2 years, and I think he's a rightful favorite, but it's just not worth my money. I just kind of want to see what I get there. But generally, I do like the guy that has fought better competition, and he surely has. This loss to Sakai probably looks worse now, and a split decision loss to Derek Lewis is just weird. But beating Ben Rothwell and Tai Tuivasa back-to-back, there's a world where I end up putting a little bit on Blagoy and see if he's healthy after a 2-year comeback, but I don't know. It's not on my card right now. You'll see at Mike Mush Sports. Give it a follow. You'll find out if I update you before Saturday. The Royval Schnell fight. Royval should win, but the price is probably what it should be. And I'm just not eager to pay it. But I like Royval. I want to see where he can go. Chaos Williams, Randy Brown is a fight that is just... I'm kind of just not betting Chaos Williams fights. Reminds me... This is a weird comparison, but a little bit of Tyron Woodley, where it's like he's either going to land the bomb and win, or it'll be a close fight and probably a little more boring than if the other result happened. And I just don't have a feel yet for which style fighters going against him matter. And I felt the same way about Woodley for a while. It was like, yeah, if he's aggressive and lands his punch, he's going to win. And if he doesn't, he's probably going to lose a decision. And that's kind of just where I'm at with him. He's got actually a more well-rounded game than Woodley did, probably, which is saying a lot because Woodley was a champion. I'm not saying he's that good, but that's just how I feel about it, so I'm staying away from that one. You go to the main card, though, and there's so much I like about it. But the Cerrone-Luzon fight, I mean, if you're betting real money on this fight, that is wild. Joe Lozon hasn't fought since... I have no idea. 2019. And got a good win there, but it's like, all right, I don't know what to do with this. This just feels like 2 guys that are very skilled and realize that they could fight each other and it might be interesting, and if they fought other people, it might not look as good at this stage in their career. I love Cowboy, by the way. He's one of my favorite fighters ever, but it's hard to be inspired by what we've seen recently. He's 39 years old. He's clearly not getting better, and hasn't won a fight since 2019. So is that better or worse? Not having fought since 2019 or losing pretty emphatically? And now to good competition, right? I mean, Tony Ferguson, Gaethje, Conor, Pettis, the Nico Price thing, whatever. And then Morono. And I bet Morono in that fight, and it was quick and bad. Yeah, I don't want to go against Cerrone, but I think Lozon at plus 144 in a fight against 39-year-old Donald Cerrone probably is maybe worth a look, but I don't know. Putting money on that fight is nonsensical, if you ask me. Same with this, honestly. Shogun and OSP, like, I like OSP, and Shogun's a legend. Why is OSP ever a minus 260 favorite against anyone at this point? But Shogun hasn't inspired me either, so it's funny. This is a card I really like, and I don't mean to, like, sound like these are not worth looking at. I'm excited for the event. It's just, what do I do with this? I think there's a world where you just take both of these dogs. I don't have this on my card, but I think it's interesting. You take both and you just figure that one of them's going to get the job done and you'll come out on top a little bit. They could both lose, I guess. But this line just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, what have his losses looked like? I know there's a bunch of them. Yeah, I don't... Yeah, this is weird. What are Shogun's recent odds looking like? Because why is he such a dog here? It's weird. Oh, wow. It opened at minus 160, huh? And FanDuel has it at what? Minus 260? Why? Is there something I'm not understanding here? Maybe. But you look at his recent fights, he was a minus 300 favorite. He was minus 215 over Paul Craig, who he lost to, right? Oh, draw. Tyson Pedro, he was an underdog. But to be this big an underdog feels bizarre. So, yeah, I don't know. If anything, just to protect myself, I would take like half a unit on both of the dogs and just hope that one of them win and I have fun gambling on it. But these aren't the spots that I think we should put our money down, considering there's 3 other incredible fights, which I'm excited to talk about. Chandler and Ferguson, here's the problem. Tony Ferguson, I love, but you can't bet money on Tony Ferguson in 2022 because you've already seen the point where you're like, oh my God, someone has to stop this from happening. And it's really hard for me to turn back from that Gaethje fight. The Oliveira one, it's fine because Oliveira taps a lot of people. It was interesting because they're both such submission artists that it really seemed like a big moment. And the arm breaking thing, which was disgusting, probably really hurt Tony Ferguson and still does. But that at least you could forgive. In a submission match, someone was going to get a submission. You know, it's feasible. 2019 against Cerrone, you know, now we're going back pretty far. They were talking about him fighting Diaz and he would be a favorite. I mean, that's insane to me. The Dariush fight, he was still a favorite. And that I thought was really weird. And I can't... You can't turn back from what Gaethje did to him. And so, after seeing that, I'll be excited for his fights, but in no world am I putting money on Tony Ferguson. And I just think this line probably isn't wide enough just out of respect for what Tony Ferguson can maybe do. But you watch Chandler in his most recent fights, and it's like, well, what were the odds on his most recent fights? Because he's looked good against the top guys that Tony hasn't looked good against. So doesn't that kind of tell you everything you need to know about where these two guys are going? Chandler was +1. Oh, that's future. Sorry. That would be a good fight, though. But Poirier should be a favorite against him, even though I think those odds are pretty wide, too, if I'm being honest. Chandler was +120 against Gaethje. And probably too much respect, I guess. And he was +150 against Oliveira. If Tony Ferguson fought Oliveira again now, I would imagine those odds would be much worse than this. Probably 500-600 almost. And, I mean, maybe not, but I think so. Especially off of these losses for Ferguson. And I don't think the odds would be that wide in a Chandler Oliveira matchup because they weren't the first time, and not that much has changed between the two of them, except for one of them won, but it was a good fight. They had each other on the ropes. So, yeah, I just think this is having respect for Tony Ferguson, which he deserves, but at the same time, if you've already seen probably what you think is the worst of somebody, you can make the argument it's all up from there, but with his injuries and stuff, he never really recovered from the ACL tear either. And now he has the arm thing and 100 other injuries who knows about, and you don't hear anything about him. You don't see him train, and it's like, he'll be ready, and then when he takes a bunch of shots, is he going to... Your chin doesn't really come back from that, I don't think. I think Chandler could just be so much more energetic right off the bat, and not that Tony's going to gas, but man, when that chin has been exposed the way it has for him, I think hard shots from Chandler, which will eventually land, are going to have a real bad impact on him. And he's just looked like he's getting older, which is, I hope I'm wrong about, but I'll definitely have Chandler on my card. And I don't want to get cute with it because who really knows the method? It's going to be hard to put Ferguson away. It always is. I don't know if he... I mean, this is a 3-round fight, which is weird, too. Should be a 5-rounder, it feels like, for these two guys. But I don't know if Ferguson will go away in a 3-round fight. If he didn't go away against Gaethje until somebody stopped it, then I don't see what's really going to stop him. And I don't think Chandler is going to wrestle him to death because Ferguson is at least good enough down there to survive. But I think that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like him just surviving and probably getting out of there, and Chandler decision makes sense, but he could definitely finish him too. So I'm just going to take that money line. We'll pair it up with something or other. Rose Namajunas, I love. And we'll talk about Trevor Whitman for the remainder of these two fights because my favorite coach in UFC. He's awesome. He always has his fighters completely prepared, not only in a steady trajectory upwards, but always for the fight that they have to fight. And he's too clever to let this one go, and I don't think these odds are wide enough, to be honest with you. Thug Rose is one of the better strikers. She's the best striker in the division, I think, and one of the better strikers in UFC, and has complete knockout power and combos and speed. There's really nothing that her stand-up game does not have. Good defensively, too. And Carla Esparza just flat out is not good on the feet. I really think she's very hittable. Her striking leaves a lot to be desired. This seems like a really wide matchup. And I know Carla Esparza is a good wrestler, but I don't think Rose is a bad wrestler. I think if you get her on her back, you could probably hold her there. Maybe they're expecting some ground and pound here from Esparza. And I think seeing Rose get dropped on her head once and lose to a wrestler in Andrade, Esparza's a better on-the-ground wrestler than Andrade, I guess. But I think that's impacting the line a little bit here. Like, oh, is she going to have some trouble with a wrestler? I don't think so. I don't think Esparza is going to, like, push her up against the cage and bully her. I don't see that coming. So it's just a matter of whether she gets taken down. Esparza has top control for a long time and just wears on Rose and just wins ugly rounds with control and a couple of elbows from the top. But I think there's such a wide gap in this striking that I think, A, it might not ever get there. I think it's maybe even worth, like, I haven't looked at this until just now, but can we get first round knockout? Is that a thing that they have on here? Method and round combo, round 1 knockout is plus 1200. I mean, there's a real chance I put that in. I don't have it on my card now. At Mike Mush Sports as we get closer to the event on Saturday. But yeah, I kind of like those odds, and 1700 for the second round. I think something like that. She could just really blitz her and finish the fight early, I think. And yeah, I'm all in on Rose here. And the bigger reason being, I love Trevor Whitman, and you think he's not going to know the only way that Esparza can win this fight? She's not going to win on the feet. And no disrespect to her coach, but there's no flexibility to be had there. You can't just teach her to strike with Rose Namajunas overnight. It's not going to happen. And so they have to play a specific game plan, and it's very predictable. And I think Trevor Whitman, while his strength is being a striking coach, and he's unbelievable at it, look what he's done with Usman. I mean, ridiculous. To say turned his career around is ridiculous, but added a whole weapon into his arsenal. And Rose doesn't have to work on that very much. Not any new tricks to deal with Carla Esparza. So I think most of this camp should just be training what she already knows, stuffing takedowns, and getting up from your back. And if she has been training those kind of things, which I assume I know nothing, so a good coach would have her training that and more if necessary, then it's very few things to have to worry about. Because when you're on the feet, just get in there and spar, because you're going to land shots and they're going to add up. So I think the odds on this are kind of crazy. And I definitely have it on my board. And there's a real chance that I up those unit counts. So, definitely give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram. I'll be all over there during the fights, before. But yeah, I mean, get it in there. Trevor Whitman. I can't quit him. Unfortunately, he's fighting probably my favorite fighter in the UFC right now. And this fight, Oliveira and Gaethje, normally I'd be all over Oliveira against just about anybody at this point, but Gaethje just has this ability to just make you go, I don't know, maybe he does land the one-punch knockout. And truthfully, you could use that same Trevor Whitman argument against myself currently. I also love that they do his fighters on the same nights. Usman fought the last time. All three of them fought, but this time I guess not. I guess probably too big a pay-per-view, to be honest, to put them all together maybe again. But either way, I think they should do more of that. The UFC has something there. Like, get coaches more involved. Make them personalities. And it's almost like you start like little stables of fighters. I think it's kind of cool. But yeah, so you could say that Trevor Whitman's going to have him ready for this fight. I'm trying to think of what he's going to do to deal with Oliveira, though, because he's so well-rounded. You can't go to the ground, so you could try to stifle takedowns, but Gaethje is already really good at takedown defense and defensive wrestling, so I don't know what new you can get there. Now, one thing I do think is that Oliveira has weird takedown. He's not just shooting from far away and grabbing you and wrestling you down. He's more like getting you in a clinch, making you worry about his knees and his strikes and his uppercuts, which are actually really good. And that's where the best of his striking happens, like dirty boxing scenarios. But then when you're thinking about that and trying to defend them, he gets you in a quick lock around the back and drags you to the ground. And I don't know how you deal with that other than what? Let him hit you and worry about the takedown? So he really is playing chess with you. Maybe Whitman will have something ready for that, so Gaethje actually doesn't get in the clinch in the first place or tries to break it so that he doesn't have to worry about either thing. Maybe he tries to keep space. It's weird because in this fight, normally, you would think that Oliveira, the longer fighter, rangier striker probably, since Gaethje is a hooker, not Dan, you would think normally he'd want to keep the space, but to me, Gaethje has the leg kicks. Oliveira can kick, but the Gaethje ones you're worried about. Look at the Poirier fight. And then Oliveira also has these close quarters, like even closer than hook range. So jab range maybe Oliveira, but probably not because of the leg kick. Hook range definitely Gaethje, and then it goes, the closer and closer you get, the better it favors Charles, who's the thinner, less stocky fighter, so that's normally not how we look at this, but I think that's kind of how it's going to go. Oliveira's going to be the one closing the space, both for striking and for takedowns, and if he can get it to the ground, Gaethje will just be trying to escape, you would think. Which, against Khabib, didn't look very good, and Khabib has a way of making everyone look really bad, but honestly, so does Charles Oliveira. So I would imagine the method is just escape, but he doesn't really let you, and he's so quick with his transitions that he is on your back before you know it. Sometimes he'll get on your back before you're on the ground. If he can get you in the clinch and sneak around the back, he's going to get that body lock in. I mean, Ferguson does it too, but not to the degree that Oliveira did. He did it to Ferguson, and you're going to have a real problem getting away from that. So I don't know if you could train for this. I think Gaethje's going to want to keep it at range, start ripping those leg kicks, maybe slow him down, and then just look for the one bomb to put him out. Because Oliveira does eat shots. Like, he got hit by Chandler. You see this happen. And sometimes he goes to the ground. He's hard to put away. I think the problem will become if you hit him hard as Gaethje and you think you have him, you have to pounce and try to finish that fight. It's a championship fight. And if you have someone rocked with your kind of power, one more shot can end it. Then you're kind of coming into Oliveira's guard, though, and I don't know if you really want that. This isn't really like, yeah, Gaethje can wrestle, but it's not a ground and pound scenario that I think he's going to succeed in, because you're always scared of a triangle or an arm bar. He can throw up stuff from the bottom, and it's not going to be comfortable, or he can just skirt around you and get better position. So I don't know how Gaethje finishes it unless it's a legit one-punch, knock the lights out KO. And I've seen Oliveira take big bombs and get up and win the fight afterwards. So it's too much for me to bet on Gaethje just landing truly a whip that puts his lights out. It can happen, and if you like Gaethje at knockout prop, then I guess plus 200 is okay. But I would much rather look at the Oliveira by submission, because I think even if you're looking at props that don't pay out great but are better than laying juice, right? Because Oliveira at minus 172 and probably plummeting as we get to fight time, although people like Gaethje, so I don't know. But that seems like too much juice to lay in a spot where Gaethje could clearly win by knockout. He could. So I think these two things are the ones you're looking at. If this fight gets to points, it would be really shocking. And I like Oliveira's striking, but it's generally used to open up the fighter to make a mistake for him to get position on you and choke you out, or do something to you to put the lights out. So I don't, and Gaethje's chin is just so ridiculous. I don't think it's going to be by stoppage. If it's on the feet and via strikes, it would be very surprising unless he really gets in there, lands a short uppercut, you know, goes for maybe a takedown. Gaethje tries to stuff it, and then he eats a couple more shots, I guess. But I can't imagine Gaethje's going to go out, and the ref usually gives him a lot of leeway. So I think the only things worth playing here are the Oliveira submission, which could come through strikes, but then, you know, jump on the back and finish it, or the Gaethje TKO. I just don't see... I sooner can see the big one punch from Gaethje leading to an Oliveira submission where Gaethje tries to finish it too fast and gets caught in a bad position. He's a really cerebral fighter. That those two things don't generally go together. The meathead guy that just charges forward and throws shots and eats bombs generally doesn't get looked at as the high IQ fighter, but I do think Gaethje is, and I think he has a great coach that won't... He must know that Gaethje can't go for the kill too fast and too crazily, because he's going to get caught in some place that he doesn't want to be at, the same way he did with Khabib on the ground. But that's assuming that Gaethje even lands the big shot, and it's assuming that he doesn't just see red and want to go win the belt if he does land one. And also, what is he going to do? Back off and then let Oliveira up? I mean, that doesn't really work either. So I don't know the game plan for him winning here. I think chopping the leg is the way in, and then just see what opens up and just be really sharp with your defensive wrestling, and getting back to your feet. But yeah, I like this Oliveira submission prop only because all these scenarios I keep leading to wind up either on the ground somehow, or I really think Oliveira can get you there in the clinch. Either by dragging you down or just taking your back while standing and then just wearing it out. And I don't want to call it a weakness that I saw in Gaethje against Khabib, but like, he had just no answer for the spider monkey ability that Khabib had, and nobody has. But Oliveira has that same stuff to him, and he's even lankier. So, and you could say he's a better submission artist than Khabib. I mean, it's not as much ground and pound stuff, but he can throw up more things more efficiently and quickly. So yeah, I kind of see it going that way, and Gaethje's going to try to stuff takedowns, but I just don't think Oliveira's going to run in for a single leg just the same way everyone else does. It's not his style, so I like this plus 135 for the submission, and that brings us to the picks. 5 units on the line. We'll start from the bottom. I said I like Fialo against Cameron Van Camp. I'm parlaying him with Michael Chandler against Tony Ferguson. 2 units on this one at minus 175. I know there's a lot of juice on both those fights, but I feel like they're both very safe, and I like that as a balancer for the other stuff that we're about to do. So minus 175 odds, Chandler and Fialo, 2 units. Hopefully we get some back and we can balance ourselves out on some of these longer shots that we're trying to take. The next one is a 3-fight parlay. I like Chandler money line, I like Rose money line, and I like Oliveira money line against Gaethje. I know I said I didn't like the odds so much, but when you put it in the parlay, you get plus 170 for all those. And for as much as I think the Chandler and Namajunas ones are pretty free relative to the number that they're getting, then I think plus 170 for those 3 fights is pretty good. I got 1 unit on that one. That brings us to 3 total, 2 to go. And I told you, I like Rose by KO. I just think this stand-up is so far away. And you could get the Rose by KO at plus 440. This feels like robbery to me, honestly. I love this bet. I might increase it. I put a full unit on it for now. Definitely check back at Mike Mush Sports. Subscribe to the channel, like it, leave a comment, join the chat. It's live, etc. But I really love this bet on Rose. I don't know why the odds are so wide. I bet they will get a little more narrow once we get closer to fight time. But if she's going to win, I don't see why Carla Esparza would last 5 minutes with her on the feet unless she's just laying on top. And again, I just trust the coach to be able to close that gap. And then we just went over it. Oliveira by submission, plus 135 for a unit. I like that. I want to put more units on the main event just because I'm so excited for it. But truthfully, this is the only one I see value on, and I doubt I'll increase it. I just want to enjoy that fight for what it is, but I believe Oliveira is the best submission artist we've seen in a long time, and we already watched one similar fight with Gaethje on a losing end against another legend, but I think Oliveira's a legend too. He deserves at least 90% of credit that Khabib is getting at this point in his career versus the peak of Khabib. I think they're doing the same thing to people and mauling them. So Oliveira by sub, plus 135. Those are the bets. 5 units on the line. We are plus 52.4 units on the year in 2022. It's going well. We're entering the summer. There's a lot of big stuff going on. Golf events coming. We're doing pretty well on baseball. Got those at Mike Mush Sports. You can always follow those bets. NBA playoffs are still closing up. We're doing at least 1 video breakdown per week, maybe 2. And give it a subscribe. Come back. Make some cash. And we'll see you next time. Peace out.